Hello, I hope you're all having a good day. The mid-season patch notes have just been shared with us and I think people are going to be happy. Every single change is a buff. There is not a single nerf in sight. Jager's being buffed, Bandit's being buffed, Solis is being buffed like 4 or 5 times, and Denari is also being buffed 4-ish times, but to our reverts of previous nerfs. Here is everything coming in this mid-season patch, which will launch on the 14th of October. So if you're watching this the day I release it, this is tomorrow. If not, it's coming on the 14th of October. So first things first, I will start with Bandit. This is my favorite change of the changes released. Bandit is being buffed. He is now getting a new secondary weapon. He is getting the Keratos 357, which I believe is Maestro's secondary, not the Bailiff, but the other one. And I think also Wamai may have had this, but do please correct me if I'm wrong. But Bandit's now getting this too. Now, this is such a small but major change for Bandit. So I love Bandit. He's one of my most played operators. He is my 3rd most played defender in the game. But I don't play him that much anymore because I mainly solo queue. And having to ask my teammates to put the holes in the soft wall before I start to trick, or asking them to make holes in the floor. So for example, on Lair, on default breach, people try to get it, like Ash tried to get the window below. So I always ask my teammates to put holes in the floor, so if an Ash does try to go to that window, I can then eliminate her whilst also tricking. But sometimes when you solo queue, it's like talking to a brick wall. But that doesn't matter anymore because Bandit can now make those holes himself. Bandit can now put holes in a soft wall or a soft floor during the prep phase or during the round, but during the prep phase, so he can then trick better with sound and he doesn't have to rely on anybody else to be able to do it because he can solo do it all himself. I will 100% now play Bandit more in solo queue because I don't have to ask my teammates to help me in regards to helping me set up, because I can now do it solo as Bandit with literally just the introduction of a new secondary weapon for him. Previously, it was a whole ordeal and now you can do it solo. Honestly, cannot stress just how big of a change this will actually be for people who like to Bandit trick or play Bandit and play support. So another change happening, Jager is also being buffed. He is receiving the P10C, which is Warden's secondary pistol. They have said that they wanted to give Jager a secondary with a sight so he can then take mid to low range gunfights for those who want to bring his primary shotgun. Now, Bandit and Jager's primary shotgun is actually a really good shotgun, and I see it played a lot more on PC than I do console. But this means that he could now take a gunfight if he decided to roam, for example, or if he needed to take a gunfight on breach or wherever. He doesn't have to rely on his shotgun being super up close. He can now do a mid-range gunfight. Now, I don't really have an opinion on this. I think it's good that they're trying to like buff him, but until I play this in the game, I can't really formulate an opinion on it. I think it will be a good thing. I mean, it's definitely not going to be a bad thing, at least. Do I think it will make that much of a difference right now? I'm not sure. So until I see it played in the game, I can't really tell you how effective this one will be. Whereas with Bandit's change, that will 100% be effective. Like, I don't have to play it to know that will just be a very good change. Solis is receiving loads of love in this mid-season patch. They did say they were going to give her impacts back last week on our call. We knew that. We knew that was happening. But oh my god, they've buffed her loads. Like, Solis's era could be slightly back. Like, she back. So, a bunch of changes are happening with Solis. She is getting her impacts back and losing her bulletproof camera. This in itself is a very big buff for Solis. People might not realize how big of a buff this is. But now if Solis can see that somebody is planting, she can use the impacts to basically force them off of the diffuser or off of the plant. It also then means they can no longer plant where they were initially planting because Solis has put a massive hole in the floor and they're no longer safe to do so. So this will be great for Solis. This will also give her some more like fragability as well, because although impact damage has been nerfed and the splash damage has been nerfed, this, if somebody is like only 50 HP and they're trying to plant because it's late round and stuff like that, like this will just help Solis a lot. But there is more, like so much more coming to Solis. Her gadget's detection range is currently 12 meters. They have almost doubled it. It will now be 20 meters going forward from tomorrow. The overclock duration, where she like overclocks it and you can then see all of the abilities or all of the electronics and see exactly what they are. Previously it was 10 seconds. These will now be 15 seconds. And if you were using her gadget and it had depleted and it was recharging, you had to wait for it to be 50% recharged before you could use it again. Well, it's now only 25%, so you can now do it doubly as fast. I don't know if that makes grammatical sense, but it will be even quicker. So now the minimum spec IO charge to activate the ability is now set to 25% instead of 50%. All of these changes for Solis are genuinely huge. Solis may become an absolute tyrant again, which I'm here for. She was over nerfed so hard. I'm glad she's finally receiving the love. I think maybe if anything they've gone for like super maybe strong buffs to see how it plays instead of just doing a tiny buff then a tiny buff again. We can then see where Solis will lie between this super strong buff compared to how she was before the buffs and how she'll be post buff, and maybe she now might be too strong and just need tiny tweaks instead of like a million buffs, sorry. And then finally, the buffs do not stop. We have multiple buffs for Denari. So again, they did tell us last week that they were going to revert the change on Denari where once the line of sight was blocked, it would take like a second or so for them to reactivate, which then stopped people from being able to counter shields with him, to be able to do like the instant eliminations and things like that with him. Well, they've reverted this, which is great, but they've also reverted the damage. So he now does 20 damage per laser again instead of 15, so that's up from 5. But they've also buffed his glaive 12 like a bunch of times, because the glaive 12 right now is booty cheeks, like it's so bad. However, the damage is now increased from 63 to 67. The damage range drop off is increased up to 15 meters to match other slug shotguns. Improved recoil and first shot recoil, PC and console. Total ammunition increased from 29 to 44, and hip fire accuracy increased to match other slug shotguns. He will basically now have a mini boss G as his secondary weapon. Obviously nowhere near as powerful in regards to damage, but it will actually be a viable secondary weapon, because right now it's terrible for rotates and it's terrible for damage. This is genuinely huge for Denari. Like, Denari might now be played a bit more because you can solo set up the site, because right now he has not had the effect that they were hoping that he would, because you cannot set up site quick enough with his lasers because his secondary shotgun just doesn't do enough. However, it does once again, and Denari is, I would say, so back. He was never really here, but Denari could be here and Solis could be so back, and Bandit so back. Like, these are great changes. Really curious on how you guys feel about these mid-season patch. I know this isn't the savior of Siege, but small steps in the right direction. I hope they continue this, because if they do, Siege will also be so back if they can combat the cheaters.